This is a quick video on our string calculator. String calculator is a nice kind of Kata, which is allowing us to practice string manipulation and also just to improve our understanding of how to create slightly more complex test-driven development. So we're going to add our package, and we're going to remind ourselves of what we want. So this is a string calculator with certain requirements. Let's put those up so we can see those. So if we just get our string calculator instructions, and we remember that there are about 9 separate instructions, so it's quite a nice kind of list. So I'll just add each of these as different examples of what we want. So this one is arbitrary number size. The first one is like simple calculator. So simple calculator, then arbitrary number, then we've got our new line separator, so that's going to be between each of our then we've got custom separators, so it should be able to handle all of these different examples. And then we've got disallow negatives, so you're not allowed to have negatives with this string calculator. And also we've got ignore numbers bigger than 1,000. And then finally arbitrary length separators. And also we've got multiple single length separators. And then finally multiple longer length. So we're basically, we've almost been given a kind of series of tests to work with. So it's still relatively workable. I'm again going to use parameterized tests here. There may be a couple of instances when I will have to use a more directed test, but we can have a look at that when it comes up. So let's start with our first input, which is nothing, and then expect that to return 0, and we're going to have a string input and a int output. And then we are going to assert that string calculator to save time. I'm just going to create a setup, and I'm going to put in this and then we're going to create this method. and we are going to actually create this in I think we need to not have this as private, as final. Good. Okay then, so we've created our string calculator, and then we're going to do string calculator.add inputs, and our add method is going to take in a string. Oops, and it's going to return an int, so we need to return the int, and great. So now we have our first instance. This is going to fail, of course, so we want to just return 0 to make this pass. So let's have a look. So that's good. That's our first passing test. Now we're going to think about well, actual 0. So if we input 0 plus 0, what's that going to return? And also this makes us start to think about the delimiter as well. So we need to have a particular delimiter which will allow us to use the commas within our, and use a semicolon for our delimiter in the parameterized test. So this will also pass. We have no parameter for this first one. It's because this one is actually, should be a semicolon. Great, so we've got our first passing 1, and then we're going to go on to our next test, which is 1 and 0 should equal 1. So this is not quite passing, so we can actually make this pass with a little slightly cheeky one. So return integer parseInt, and then input dot split according to the comma, and then take the first part and then add that with similar, actually just the second part of that split. So we're going to add that here, and this should actually work for this test now. So we've got input. Problem with this input, if it's the length of the input is nothing, so we can just say the input dot length is 0, then we're going to return 0 for the moment. So that will make our test pass. And then we've also got our issue with the spaces, so we're going to have to trim both of these to make sure that we've not got any extra spaces, because we can't parseInt on extra spaces. Now, there's all the time we have to remember that we want to push our work up and make sure that we save what we've done. So we're going to share this on our GitHub. Now, our next one is going to be for a series. Well, we can do for 1 and 2, but also it's going to be for a series of numbers that we're going to want to check as well. So we'll just do 1 and 2 and expect that to add to 3, so that's fine. We got any more? No, nothing else to add, so that's good. So now we can move to our next example, which is 1 plus 2 should equal 3. So hopefully that's going to work. I think it will. That's good. And now we want to have a series of numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we're going to expect that to make 45. So we're going to test this one. And that's actually only made 3 because we're only taking the first 2 numbers. So now we start to think, how can we start to make these a bit more efficient? So we can start to think about our streams, and we can do arrays.stream of result of input dot split, and then according to our regex. So that's good. And then we're going to return this, so we're going to replace this from our earlier statement. And then we're also going to map this to a string and then split strip. And we're also going to map to int and call integer parseInt on each of these results, and then we're going to sum our results. Now this should return this should turn up the correct response for a series of numbers. So that's quite a nice addition. Add a string for adding several numbers. So that's quite a nice step forwards. So now we're starting to think about the next rule, which is for 1,000. Well, we've got a new line here. I think we do need to add that. So for new lines, I think we can add that as a as part of our regex here. So we're gonna just see what happens if we add this this new line, for instance. So let's see what happens here and see how we can deal with this. So this should equal 6, and at the moment that's going to fail because we've got an issue with our parameter resolution exception for our new line here. So what happens if we just add correction here as part of our regex? I think we should be alright. I think we may also need some square brackets here, so we can add those as well. And let's have a look and see what the result is now. So we've still got an issue. I think this might be because we've got an issue with our the new line space is leaving a gap. So let's have a look and see what that looks like. I think we need to, this is a problem with actually having parameterized tests, because so this has got to the input of several numbers, and now we should be getting to the next one. See if we can get to that one more time. What we might need to do here is comment out these ones to make it a bit easier to debug. So again, we've got this no parameter issue. I believe this is because I have got something wrong with the inputs, and this might be that we need to have our quotes for the actual there we go. So this is now passing, so that's good. It was just an issue with the formatting for the test, so that's good news. So now we can move on to our next test, which is in fact for minuses. So we can add this, add new line to parameterized test. So that's good. So we've added that on. So now we can start to look at the next kind of specification, which is for minus numbers. And if there are minus numbers, then we want to have we want to have our guard for this, really. So that's really important to make sure that there isn't a so negative. There should be an error here. So now we're definitely going to have to have a separate. So I think what we want to have here is a new test, and we're going to have throws exception for input less than 0. And it's quite nice to have the assert throws here, and we're going to have an illegal argument exception in our instance, and we're going to, so the way we do this is a kind of a anonymous function, and we call string calculator dot add and put in our input of 1, -2 and -3, and our kind of hypothesis is that this will throw this illegal argument exception. So this doesn't, of course, at the moment, so we need to make sure that it does. So one way we can do this is really just before the sum. We can add a nice neat little peek method, which looks at the numbers, and if the number is less than 0, then we can throw new illegal argument exception, and we can say negatives not allowed to the user. So this should now pass this test, and that kind of moves us on to the next stage, and means that we're able to check for our next specification. So add legal argument exception. So that's good. So now we're starting to move on to ignoring numbers over 1,000, and that's not too difficult because we just need to add this kind of condition to our stream again, and we're going to literally filter out any numbers which are more than 1,000. So we're only going to take numbers which are less than or equal to 1,000. If it's more than 1,000, then we just ignore it, and we're expecting the result 2 from 1,001 plus 2. So that's a nice little solution for that. So we're whizzing along, and we're starting to get onto the final 3 kind of specifications that we've been given, and these ones start to get a little bit more challenging. So we're gonna have to be a bit more kind of thoughtful about how we approach this now, and this is for a arbitrary length of delimiters now. So we're going to take this. Now with these custom delimiters which are being added on the front, they have 2 markers. They've got the forward slashes and the new line to signify that they are delimiters. That they're going to be the custom delimiters that we're going to use. So this is now going to throw an error, and the reason is because we've got a number format exception. So we're going to have to be quite imaginative about how we correct this and start to because we're not getting any splitting according to new line or commas. We're taking the whole thing and trying to parse that as an integer, and it's just not working. So we're going to have to create our regex as we go. So we're going to create a regex string builder, which we're going to insert into this split method. So we're going to create our new string builder. I'm going to start it off with the new line and comma as the things that we include. So we can then add this regex, and then we're going to start pushing into including this regex. In fact, I don't think we need this at the moment. I think we can take that later. We're going to have our string builder result, and we're actually going to use that instead of the input now, because we're going to have a bit of cleverness here in how we're going to add and take away from the. So if the input starts with our forward slashes, then we're going to add our custom and to the regex. So we're going to add the input from the index of this the kind of custom signifier to the new line. And then we're going to also append to our result the input dot substring input dot index of new line with the trim of so that we don't need to add all of the we don't need to do any more with our result then, in order to, because we've taken off, once we've added that all of this stuff to the regex, we can cut it off, and then we've literally just got this, which we've added, where we've added the stars to the regex, so we'll be able to just check through that for our addition of numbers. So we've got our map, we've got our filter for any blank numbers. I think that is what we will also need to do. We're going to have to filter for any blank input strings, so we can do that quite easily with a isBlank method, and that allows us to ensure that we're not putting any empty strings into the number. So that's good. We've covered that instance, but we've still got an error here for index out of bounds, and I think that's because we've actually what have we done? So we've got an index out of bounds. We've got our results, we're summing it up, so that's good. We've got our new regex. We've got index out of bounds, start 0, end -1. So it's got to be something here. Yeah, I think what we've done wrong here is I've just got these two ends here, the new line. So yeah, so that was just a little kind of error in the test itself. So now we can just go to our final one, which is checking that we can have well, firstly individual single kind of delimiters, and that's going to pass, and this is going to add to 6, so we can test that. And we've got an issue again with the new lines, and then we just need to add for our multiple longer delimiters, and this should equal 6 as well. And again, we've got our issue with the new lines, so we can just check that one more time. And now all tests are passing. So that's really nice kind of overview of adding for string calculator.